So it's clear that we have a problem in the United States, and the problem is China. Well, it's one of many problems we have in the United States, but we should focus on the China problem, at least at the start. This word that there was this communist Chinese police station in New York, and then after that bust, learning that there are 6 more across the country: Minnesota, California, maybe places you'd expect, and Texas. This is about the Chinese, never mind just a spy balloon. This is about the Chinese acting with impunity, believing that they can invade every part of us, have a say over every part of us. This is about the desire, the need, the want for domination, and the United States seems to be doing a whole lot of nothing about it. Where is Biden? Where is Congress? Guys, welcome to the show. I'm Tony Katz, presented by Americans for Prosperity, AmericansForProsperity.org, economic liberty, free speech. That is what it's all about. Let me bring in Congressman Jim Banks right there from the Indiana 3rd District. That's the Fort Wayne area of Indiana, not too far up the road from where I'm at. He's also a candidate for Senate for the Republicans. Caught him in his car while the man is working. And sir, let's start with the basics here, because you're also working on a series of movements regarding being anti-woke. Let's start with this. The communist Chinese. You were one of the first people I ever heard talking about, outside from me, the Confucius Institutes that existed on college campuses. Talk to me about what these police stations do, how they relate to what were called Confucius Institutes, and how they should be dealt with.
Tony, when I first heard this story about these secret police stations in New York and around the country, I wasn't surprised by it, but I was shocked that the administration wasn't doing anything about it. I was the first member of Congress to call on President President Biden rather, to address these police offices that the Chinese have set up. But here's the deal. We went from President Trump, who was tough on China, to President Biden, who's the weakest president that we've ever had on the China threat. And China is the greatest foreign threat, the biggest existential threat that America faces today. But here's what happened. President Trump set up something called the China Initiative at the Department of Justice. When President Biden was sworn into office, he called that initiative, that DOJ initiative, xenophobic. And he canceled the Department of Justice's focus on the China threat in the United States of America. So here's what we know. 6 months ago, when I called on President Biden to address this, these police offices are run by something called China's Public Security Bureau, which is sort of part of their united front effort in the United States. So Confucius Institutes, as you mentioned, are a part of this, but they set up these police stations in the United States to harass and intimidate Chinese Americans who are outspoken about the Chinese Communist Party. So this is happening in the United States of America, and President Biden's not doing anything about it. This week, finally, 6 months later, after I called on them to do something, the Department of Justice arrested 2 of these Chinese police officer officials for not having the right visas to be in the United States. So too little, too late. A week. I'm glad that they made these arrests, but another example of the weak posture of this administration. After the spy balloon flew over the United States, they pretended like it didn't happen until people were outraged, looking up into the sky about it. And now, in this case, setting up these secret police stations. This is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to do.
What's interesting is that as we talk about what these police stations do, people see it as, whoa, were they trying to help people? No. These were outposts of the Communist Chinese Party, not only as the Confucius Institutes were on college campuses to try and promote China and prevent anybody from speaking poorly about China. We know that in the case of one of the New York police stations that are controlled by the Communist Chinese Party, they were spying on American citizens who happened to be pro-democracy people regarding China. They were spying on citizens, and Lord knows what you do with that spying. Is there going to be an espionage charge here? Is there something that's going to happen from the congressional side to try and engage? If Biden won't act, what's Congress's plan?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I mean, here's the deal. Just like the spy balloon, the Biden administration wouldn't have done anything about it if we wouldn't have called attention to it. I mean, they would have pretended like the balloon in the sky flying over the United States. In this case, they would have pretended like these police stations didn't exist, even though the Chinese were pretty bold and outspoken about these police stations being in the U.S. So, the big point, Tony, is that the police these secret police stations that aren't so secret are illegal. They're already illegal, and the Department of Justice, the Biden administration, is just ignoring it. The only reason that they made these 2 arrests this week is because the new Republican majority in the House is calling attention to it. So first and foremost, enforce existing laws and arrest these people and get them out of the United States. This is why we set up the new select committee on the Chinese Communist Party that I'm a part of, drawing attention to issues like this. We're going to continue to do it. But the bottom line here is the administration must act. And if they won't act, then members of Congress like myself are going to be outspoken and embarrass the administration, but enforce the existing law.
Talking to Congressman Jim Banks of the Indiana 3rd District, candidate for Senate in the state of Indiana. We've seen certainly a level of bipartisanship when it comes to China. We've seen some resolutions go through with a tremendous amount of Democrat support. It's almost uplifting to see that at least on the subject of China, we're not all crazy. We're not all Representative Jamal Bowman. What is the pressure going to be on Biden to do something about this in a bipartisan matter? Or do you believe Democrats are going to try and rally the troops against an action on China? Because after all, you don't want to provoke China. It's always one of those hands-off things. You got to worry about how they feel about stuff.
Yeah, in one of our recent select committees on the Chinese Communist Party, I asked a Uyghur Chinese American who has come to the United States, is now an American. His mom, by the way, is still being held captive as a Uyghur slave in China by the Chinese Communist Party. I asked him about this important question that I think you're getting to, Tony. The Chinese Communist Party uses charges like xenophobia and racism, and they use those as political tactics. You have Jamal Bowman and Joe Biden and others who fall into this trap and repeat these lines and the rhetoric of our biggest enemy to try to push us back and push us away from getting tough on China. And that in and of itself is preventing us from holding China accountable and pushing back on the biggest threat that we face, that wants to wipe the United States off of the face of the map. So we have to be tougher. I hope Democrats will more and more so come to the table, but I got to tell you, the last 5 years have been very disappointing. As with COVID, with what the Chinese have done to steal our jobs. Now with fentanyl, 99% of fentanyl coming into America is made in China and pushed into
Forget just the fentanyl, although I don't want to forget fentanyl, sir. I don't want to interrupt you. You have got Chinese nationals coming across the border and being allowed across the border as if somehow they just miraculously ended up coming from Beijing to Colombia and walking their way north. Talking to Congressman Jim Banks of the Indiana 3rd District, there is a photo. And it is a photo that was over there at dailycaller.com. And what this photo shows is a man alleged to be controlling this Chinese police station in New York. And the photo is with some other Asian men, Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, and Chuck Schumer, the Senate majority leader, of course, Democrat. When you see photos like that, we've seen Eric Swalwell and the Chinese spy Fang Fang. We saw that Senator Dianne Feinstein had a driver who was connected to the Chinese Communist Party. There is a serious level of infiltration already happening, connections already being made, and certainly photos like that one with Senator Schumer and Mayor Adams and this alleged perpetrator of this police station that don't look good. Now, these all happen to be Democrats in this case. Is it that Democrats are more trusting? Is it that Democrats are easier to infiltrate? Or is it that, oh, no, they're infiltrating Republicans too, we just haven't gotten to them yet?
Well, that used to be the case, Tony. I mean, I really believe that the shift in American politics away from the Republican Party being the party of corporate America and Wall Street interest, is the reason that you're seeing Democrats in these photos and not Republicans. The Democrats are owned and controlled by multinational corporate interests in this country who have for years sold us out, sold our jobs out, our good paying, hardworking, blue collar jobs to China, our biggest enemy. And that's why you see Chuck Schumer chumming it up with Chinese Communist Party officials. That's why you see Eric Swalwell literally sleeping with our enemy and the Democrats sweeping it under the rug, because the Democrats don't have room here to oppose the Chinese Communist Party because they're owned by interests that are owned by the Chinese Communist Party. So that's the shift in American politics today. Republicans have in a very healthy way distanced ourselves from those corporate interests that sell us out to China. It's why Donald Trump in Nashville at the RNC over the weekend said the old Republican Party is gone and it's not coming back. It's because those Trump policies that made us the party of the working class and not the party of corporate America have distanced us from those Chinese Communist Party interests.
One of the other things that you're working on right now is a anti-woke caucus, as it's described. Newsweek says it as Jim Banks plans anti-woke caucus to bolster GOP's war on wokeness. And one of the ways you hear this described is that you hear this described as, oh, the Republicans and their culture war again. Republicans starting a culture war every single day. It's you wascally Republicans starting a culture war as opposed to responding to the war that was brought upon you. Is this a lot of show and just bluster here? What is an anti-woke caucus? And in seriousness, what is the objective? If a year from now, when we talk about it, what will you have gotten accomplished?
Yeah, Tony, wokeism is a war on America, and I'm a doer. I'm a Navy Reserve officer. Used to be logistics officer in the Navy. I've worked in a business. I believe in action and in getting things done, and that's why I started the caucus, to bring members of Congress together to develop a strategy to cut the head off the snake of wokeism and the government flow of dollars that are funding it. And that's why last week I sent 12 letters to all 12 of the appropriations subcommittee chairs in this new Republican majority and gave all of them a list of line items in the budget under their control of where we can defund wokeism in the federal government. I'll give you a couple of good examples. $8.6 million for gender advisory programs at the Pentagon for the Department of Defense, or $34 million for the Office of Diversity in the Department of Energy. Or here's one of my favorite, $95 million for climate change at the Department of Veteran Affairs. What the hell is the Department of Veteran Affairs doing related to climate change? $200 million for Global Equity Gender Fund at the State Department. So in each of these appropriations subcommittees, there's lots of room here we're talking about $32 trillion national debt and where we're going to go to cut wasteful spending. Let's start with woke programs like the Homeland Security Department. Tony, you'll get a kick out of this. ICE is only allowed to detain transgender illegals who come over the border in facilities that where the staff has had LGBTQ plus sensitivity training. So how much did that cost? How about we defund that if we want to cut wasteful spending?
So the objective here is you don't think you could stop the people from being woke, but you can starve the resources from the implementation of these things. Is it your belief that these things, as you see them, are keeping America from its task? If we talk about the southern border, is it this kind of program that's keeping the border porous?
Yeah. Look, what can members of Congress do? We can defund these programs. Yeah, I've declared war on wokeism. It's why I started the Anti-Woke Caucus, and I'm also chairman of the Military Personnel Subcommittee on HASC, and our mission there is to get wokeism out of the military and hold military officials accountable for those who are pushing anti-Americanism and this ideology onto our troops. I'm on the education committee. There's so much we have to do to save our kids' for being exposed to this garbage that's polluting their minds and teaching them that America is anything but the greatest country in the history of the world. So this is a war on wokeism. The whole point of the caucus is to get members of Congress together with outside experts and others to look for ways that we can cut the head off the snake, stop funding these programs. The Biden administration from the outset has enacted executive orders that have pushed DEI programs in every single federal agency or department. And that has trickled down from the federal government to the state government to local government, with dollars that are tied to grants that go to each level of government from the federal government. So there's so much here to do, Tony. It's like shooting fish in a barrel, but I'm going to do my part. That's why I'm bringing members of Congress together to strategize.
Congressman Jim Banks of the Indiana 3rd District, I appreciate you taking the time to be with us, and I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to subscribe on Rumble, rumble.com/Tony Katz, and subscribe, and more videos coming every day. Appreciate you. I'll catch you next time.